Our original objectives of the Bio-Blitz were to gather some baseline data on the invertebrates, primarily the bees and other flying insects, which I was mostly interested in, but also some of the animals that we did have data on, but we were trying to fill in some of the gaps in our knowledge on where they are.
I was in the east block of Grasslands National Park, and my most memorable moment from this year was catching my very first large wild snake. I'd caught garter snakes before, but this was the first bull snake I ever caught, and it was especially good because Dr. Poulin was out there as well, and we had come out to Sinking Hill to release a racer. And when we were heading back, I was walking a little ways ahead of the group when I saw this bull snake. I yelled, "Snake!" and then I didn't do anything until Ray said, "Why are you standing there? Catch it!" And it almost got down a hole, but I grabbed it before it got down there. And I thought it was kind of funny just because I hesitated when, at the beginning of the year, I said I wouldn't.
The day that Marla and I were looking for snakes at the beach. And it's memorable because we had spent a few days looking for snakes and we hadn't found any, even though we knew that there were tons around. And so we decided we'd go look on the beach where some sightings had been recorded in the past. And when we got there, there was 2 school buses that were full of children that decided to take a day trip to this beach. And so we showed up and we had all our gear and our nets and our equipment, and we probably looked a little scary or strange to these kids. But we were looking around for these snakes. We sort of looked at each other from afar and decided, you know, maybe there probably aren't going to be snakes here today since there's so many kids and we might be scaring the kids a little bit, so we thought that maybe we'd go look somewhere else. But just at that moment, we happened across somebody that had actually worked on several other wildlife projects, sort of in conjunction with the museum and other things, so we stopped to have a chat with him. And while we were chatting, I decided to walk over to this retaining wall and rest my arms on it, kind of just like this. And Marla's standing here, and the other guy's standing there, and we're talking for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, Marla points right at me, and she says, "Right there." And I look down, and I'm like, "Is there a bee? What is it? I don't understand." And she says, "Right there." And she walks over to me, and she grabs something that was right tucked underneath the retaining wall that I was resting directly on. And it was the biggest snake that we'd found the entire summer.
I actually found a deer mouse, and what I was doing was I was walking along the top of a hill, and I came up on this huge rock, and it had a lot of weathering, so a lot of water had eroded away parts of the rock, and there was this really deep hole right in the middle of it, and I wasn't really looking for what I found, but I ended up looking in that hole, and there was a deer mouse in there, just sitting there. He was just kind of resting, and so I spent the last 20 minutes of searching around that area just trying to get a picture of it. And every time I got close to getting a picture, it would sneak off into the back of the rock, and then it would come back and try and get a picture, and it would sneak off, and then it would come back.
Well, I noticed a rat crawling along the rocky outcroppings on the other side of the sinking hill. And being the person that was filling the cups, and B cup really only requiring 1 or 2 people, I put Graham in charge of watching this rock for the next half an hour to determine what I had seen and try and get a picture of it. I was quite sure it was a bushy-tailed woodrat. About a month later, not thinking much of it, thinking they were actually fairly common, I casually mentioned it to Ray that we had seen what we think to be a bushy-tailed woodrat, and he responded and said, "Why didn't you catch that thing?" So we set about catching it. On our first day of trapping, in a live trap, we caught what appeared to be a juvenile woodrat, and unfortunately it escaped out of the top of the trap as we were trying to unload it, and disappeared into a crack in the rock, and I have not seen one since. So I'm still unaware as to whether there are bushy-tailed woodrats in the east block of Grasslands National Park.
The most memorable day for me was actually our very last day in the field, and it was just kind of like we were tying up loose ends. We had all of our insect traps in, we didn't really have much else to do, so we were just kind of taking it easy. And we had heard down the grapevine that this woman thought she had some bull snakes on her property, so we decided to go check it out. And we went there, we chatted with her for a bit, and then we spent a couple of hours wandering around, and there's no snakes, there's no snakes, there's no snakes. And just as we were about to go, I saw they were renovating their house. They had these building tiles on the side of their house, and I saw this tiny little head poke out, and it was the tiniest bull snake I think I've ever seen in my life. It was, couldn't have been wider than my pinky finger, and it turns out that this woman had bull snakes that were hatching behind the siding tiles on her house.
We had a great first field season. I got to meet some excellent growers in the province, had a lot of fun doing the research, and learned a lot of new things about crops growing in this province. So it was a very memorable field season for me.